But we're going to have to see in the halacha about when is this disqualification, these disqualifications. For sure, the disqualification is at least the first day of the Yom Tov. And as time goes on, we're going to see there's a lot of discussion about which type of things will invalidate it for the whole Yom Tov, which things might only invalidate it for the first day of Yom Tov, or maybe the first 2 days of Yom Tov. So we're going to have to see which disqualifications are which disqualifications are, will ruin it for the whole Yom Tov, which disqualifications will only some of Yom Tov. If we take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch talks about, let's say, the Pittim. Let's say we'll look at Siman Taf Reish Mem Ches in the Shulchan Aruch. There it talks about disqualifications of an esrog, right? So here it talks about if the pittim is removed, it says it is pasul. And we're going to see more as the Shulchan Aruch says, if an esrog is dry, it is pasul. And then we're going to talk about if there's a certain boils coming up on the etrog that will make the esrog pasul. And I want to see. Okay, well, yeah, you see, the Shulchan Aruch said in Taf Reish Mem Tes that all the things that we say that are pasul because of the different types of blemishes that we have with the esrog. So the Shulchan Aruch says that's the first day. That's the first day. But the rest of the holiday, he says they would be kosher. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. So he seems to be saying, Yosef Cairo, the Sephardi posek, that all these blemishes that we talked about, imperfections of the esrog, the invalidation is the first day. But the Ramah, but the Mishnah Berurah says, some of these invalidations, the problem is because it's missing. Something's missing of the etrog, right? You have something. We're going to see if something is, morning, welcome back, Max. If a small part of the etrog is missing, that's called chaser. And then there's certain things that are invalid because it's missing in beauty. Let's say if it's white, if it became dried out, the etrog. So Chafetz Chaim said the Rambam holds that it's kosher, that all of them are kosher. Whether the problem with the etrog is because it's lacking beauty, whether the problem with the etrog is because it's missing a little bit, the Rambam holds after the first day it's all kosher. But other poskim, we're going to see that other poskim disagree. The Ramah writes, Ashkenaz rabbi says, he brings from the Torah that if something is missing from the etrog, we'll see a smaller amount of the etrog is missing, it would be kosher for the rest of the holiday. And if the pittim, and the question is, what about if the pittim is missing? I ever see that pittim, the etrog fell and the pittim came off. What's the status? Morning, Mario. What's the status with that etrog? So the Ramah says that if the pittim came off, it would be like it's missing something, and it would be kosher after the first day. But if it's dry, or if it's dry or some other, it has different types of, let's say, we're going to see certain boils type, certain things that are puzzled because it has different types of spottings on the etrog. So that's the issue of beauty. Something that's dry is lacking beauty. Something that's, has certain types of boil type of things that grew on the etrog, lacking beauty. So he says beauty it would invalidate it for all the holiday. So that is that he makes a distinction in halacha between something that's missing on the etrog and something that's, the Torah says, "Kachtem b'chem." It has to be a complete. L'kicha tama. Shouldn't be something missing. Morning, Simon. So if something is missed, but that requirement is only from the first day. The question would be, what about the second day of Yom Tov? Morning, Mr. Haber. What status would the second day of Yom Tov have? Would we be as strict first day and the second day as the first day? But the bottom line is, and we want to show that, and the pittum, there are some people that say that if the pittum falls off, it is missing in beauty. It's not just a issue of you're missing a piece of the etrog. And therefore, there are those that are strict the whole Yom Tov if the pittum falls off. But the Chafetz Chaim says if you can't find anything else, you could rely on those that are lenient, that you could use an etrog if the pittum fell off the rest of the Yom Tov. So I just want to point out that we have made a very big discussion in halacha regarding this, the first day of Yom Tov, when we're talking about, when the Mishnah states that we're going to now learn about disqualifications about an etrog. Is that specific to the first day of Yom Tov, or is it referring to throughout the whole holiday? That is going to be and some make no distinction on what type of invalidation it is, whether it's boils growing on the etrog, whether it's a piece of the etrog being missing. They don't make a distinction. They say it's all about the first day. Amen. And the rest of the days we can be more lenient. And others others say it depends what the issue is. If it's a question of beauty, then it's invalid the whole holiday. The question of something being missing, we're going to be more lenient the other days. So, and some make no distinction. All the issue is only the first day. But if it's stolen, a stolen etrog, also there's a discussion. Is there a difference between the first day and the rest of the days? No, this thing is stolen. The whole etrog was stolen. Whether you can fill the mitzvah the other days or not. Okay. So let's look at the Mishnah on 34b. 34b, 3. Morning, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
The Rambam, we're going to see the Rambam is the most lenient opinion. He says that these disqualifications that are listed in the Mishnah are for the first day and the first day only. So let's see the Mishnah. Etrog hagazul, an etrog that is stolen, vayovesh, or an etrog that is dry. What does it mean that an etrog is dry? You go ahead and you put a needle through the etrog, and there's no moisture that came out on that thread. You put a needle on a thread, and the thread, no moisture came onto that thread. So that shows you that the etrog is lost its moisture. The etrog is dry. And if the etrog is dry, so that etrog is invalid to use. Now you're going to say, if you're going to do the test, isn't the test going to ruin the etrog? The answer is, since the test cannot remove any part of the etrog, you just stuck the needle through the etrog, and it just makes a hole without removing any part of the etrog. That does not invalidate the etrog. The whole etrog remains intact. Nothing was removed from the etrog. 34b3. So that's if it's dry, such a dried etrog, it will be invalid. Shelashera, if the etrog came from a tree that grew in Israel, that from a tree that was from the time of the non-Jewish people, the 7 nations before Yeshua came in, and those nations, there were certain trees that they used to worship. So let's say they had this etrog tree that they worshiped. So that etrog tree, if you go ahead and you cut off an etrog from that tree that was used for idol worship, it's invalid. You cannot use that etrog for the holiday. Shall ir hanidachat, if it was from an ir hanidachat, if it was from a city that the majority of the people worshipped idols, and the all the fruit of that city has to be burnt, so the etrog has to be burnt. So that etrog that needs to be burnt, you cannot use that etrog from such a city. The Torah has a very strict law regarding that city that the majority of the people worship idols. You have to take all the movable items of the city and burn them. And therefore that etrog is going to be invalid. We have to look up that halacha. Now, shel orla. Regarding orla, the first 3 years of a fruit of a tree, you planted a tree. The first 3 years of the tree, you can't eat the fruit. By the way, that law applies both in the land of Israel and here in America. If you plant a tree in America, the first 3 years of your tree, you cannot eat the fruit of that tree. And that's the orla tree, pasul. So that if you go ahead and you have a etrog from orla, which you're not allowed to have any benefit from, you can't eat it. And the Torah says, "Lakachtem lachem." The Torah says that you need to take for yourself an etrog, but it has to be lachem. The Gemara is going to say, if you cannot eat the item, if the item is off limits and you can't eat it, but it's not really lachem, it's not really yours. If you're missing in the eating abilities. So therefore, since it's a tree that comes, it's a
You can't receive, and Rabbi, you can't receive any benefit from this fruit of this tree for
right,
3 years.
Right, but the orla tree, you can't receive any benefit. And there's a famous Mishnah in Gemara and Kedushin on 56b, where it says if a person betroths a woman with produce from orla, from this tree, it's not a good marriage. It's not a marriage. Why is it not a marriage?
You can't even sell it.
You can't sell it. You can't have any benefits. You can't go ahead and betroth a woman with that orla. Shel truma tameya. And truma, that's the part that you give to the kohen from your produce. You go ahead and you have your wheat, you have your grapes, you have certain. You go ahead and you give truma to the kohen. Usually, the truma amount, the Torah does not define an amount how much you have to give of your produce. But the average person gave 2%. The average guy gave 1/50th. The guy with a good eye gave 1/40th, and a guy with a stingy guy gave 1/60th. Those were the different amount that people would give. Shel truma. So it says tahora. If the truma is tahar, if the truma is pure, that means it hasn't been contaminated. You're not allowed to contaminate truma. If the truma is pure and it's ready to go, you can eat the truma. So there's no problem of eating the truma. Nevertheless, the Mishnah says lo yito. You're not allowed to go ahead and use the etrog of truma to fulfill your mitzvah of etrog. And the Gemara is going to ask, what's the problem? Why can't I use so I'm a kohen. I'm not a kohen. Someone's a kohen. And you have an etrog from truma, the Israel has an orchard of etrogim fruit trees, and he gave me truma. Why can't I use it? So the Gemara is going to explain what's the issue, what's the concern, why you can't. Therefore, Rashi is going to be saying in the Mishnah. Rashi says that a lot of here the Gemara is going to explain. Rashi says we just got to take it. We got to relax. We got to ask the question why. But then Rashi says we're going to see the Gemara. We always have to ask, try to understand, right? But why? What's behind it? That's why Rashi preempts by saying, the Gemara is going to explain what the problem is what the issues are. So it says here in the Mishnah, if it's truma, so first the Mishnah says, I think I skipped 2 words. So truma tameya pasul. If it's truma tameya, if the truma became tameh, to say Samuel could take us a Gemara right here on the front if you want. If it's truma tameya, if the truma is tameh, then what happened was it got contaminated. Let's say a dead mouse came in contact with the truma, or you don't have to go into such a situation. Let's say the person was contaminated, the Kohen was contaminated, and a mistake happened, and unintentionally he touched the truma, and he contaminated the truma. So if the etrog comes from truma that is contaminated, lo yito, the Mishnah is pasul, it's invalidated. You can't use an etrog that is tameh. Now, based on what we said earlier, we would just say the reason should be because the Kohen can't eat the truma that became tameh, even though he could use it as fuel, but he can't eat it. So the truma he can't use. It's not called lachem. It's not yours in the fullest sense, and therefore you cannot use the truma etrog. Just to bring Samuel up to date, we're focusing on which type of etrogim you could use on the holiday, which times you can't use on the holiday. So we're on 34b3. So if you're going ahead, but if it's truma tahora, even if it's tahar and it's not contaminated, lo yito, you still shouldn't use it. There's something called lechatchila. There's something called b'diavad. Lechatchila means something. I tell you, lechatchila means like in the beginning, don't do it. And then there's the question. You know what? The person didn't know the halacha, or he went against it. He should have done it, and he did it. B'diavad. Does he get credit for it or not? So here we say you shouldn't use it because there is certain rabbinic concern of why you shouldn't use truma that is, even though it's pure truma, there's certain rabbinic concern. The Gemara is going to show you why you should not have done it. But if you went ahead and you did it, not doubt kosher. If you went ahead and you did it, it is kosher. After the fact, sometimes after the fact, it is kosher. Now, shel demai. What is demai? Demai is produce that you buy from an uneducated Jew. An uneducated Jew, call him an amaret. That uneducated Jew, most of them took off maaser. They took off truma. You don't have to worry about truma because truma is a very small amount. We said it could be 150 if it's the average. And if the guy wanted to be stingy, he'll be stingy. He'll give 160th. It's not a lot of sweat off his back. But to give maaser to the Levi is 10%. So 10% is already a more significant amount of tithes to take. And therefore, even though the majority of the non-educated Jews they also took off maaser. They gave the 10% to the Levi, but there was a minority, a significant enough minority that did not take off maaser, did not take off the 10% to give to the Levi. And that was a very big concern. Because if they did not take off the tithe, so then that food is untithed food and it's forbidden to eat untithed food, right? And that's why you got to be morning marks. That's why you got to be very careful. You go to Israel, if you're going to go to certain markets and just buy food in places that they didn't take off, and if they didn't take off if you're in a Haredi neighborhood, so the produce in the Haredi neighborhood is generally already taken off types already. But if you go to certain types of markets, if you go in the secular areas of Israel, and you want to go and just buy in a store or and buy some fruit, who said they took off any maaser? You can't eat it unless the maaser was taken off. So here, the issue is that there's maybe the seller did not take off the maaser. So what do we do? So the rabbi said, because of that, you, the buyer, the educated buyer, needs to take off the maaser. You have to take off 10%. But because it's more likely than not that he did give to the Levi. The Levi already got his 10% on the deal because most of these uneducated Jews did give the Maaseh. You could keep that 10% for yourself. You don't have to give. Usually, Maaseh, it's not yours; it belongs to you. It's money of the Levi. But since it's a Safek Mamon, since it's a question, who does this money belong to? So we say Safek Mamon, Hamotzi Mechavero Alav. The responsibility is on the person who wants to take the money from me. The Levi would have to prove it wasn't taken off Maaseh. If I can actually eat that Maaseh, but I have to separate it just in case it was not taken off to remove any possible prohibition status of prohibited food to eat. So it's an interesting concept. So what does it say about the Mai? So if what happened, the etrog, I bought the etrog from the non-educated Jew. Is this now, and I did not do my job yet. I did not separate the 10%. The word Demai is like an acronym for me. It's Damai. What is it? I don't know. What is it? Was it taken off, Samuel? Was it clear? Was it taken off or not? So the Mishnah brings the machloket, and the Gemara is going to explain what's behind this machloket. Beis Shammai poslim. Beis Shammai in general is the more stricter opinion. Beis Shammai says it's pasul. It's invalid. You cannot use this etrog that you don't know whether might be, so to speak, not kosher. Might be tevel. You don't know. So Beis Shammai says you don't know, and you can't use it because maybe it's tevel, maybe it's untied produce. And untied produce you can't eat. It's not lachem, right? Torah says lakachtem lachem. It has to belong something that's yours that you have. But if you have a right to eat, you can't eat. If I can't eat, if let's say I have food that Maaseh was definitely not taken off, that food is forbidden to be eaten. If I can't eat it, I can't use it for etrog. Definitely different than maybe. Exactly. So that's what. In a Haredi neighborhood, they already took off the tax. That seems to be the standard. You go in a Haredi neighborhood, you buy an etrog, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. But if you buy from an uneducated Jew, where they didn't have, today it's because they have all the hashgacha and the hashgacha, but they didn't have that type of process back then, the hashgacha, like we have today. So they're supervising agencies that are, they're giving the supervision. So therefore, the Gemara says, Beis Shammai says poslim, uBeit Hillel machshirim, and Beit Hillel says it's kosher. You're good. You're good to go. You're good to use this etrog that you don't know whether he took off the types of it or not. You could use it. Beit Hillel says it's fine. And again, the Gemara will explain why is it fine. The Gemara will explain that. Now, then Mishnah continues. Shal Ma'aseh Sheni b'Yerushalayim. Ma'aseh Sheni in Yerushalayim. Good morning, Mark. Ma'aseh Sheni in Yerushalayim, as you know, there's a 6-year cycle, and then the 7th year is Shemitah. And in the 6-year cycle, the Leviim get Ralph gets every year. The Levi gets every year 10%. First year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year. He's a yearly. What do you say? Yearly he gets. And by the way, there's a beautiful in this week's parsha. There's a beautiful not this week. No, was it last week's parsha? In last week's parsha, the Rabbeinu Bachai explains why does Mr. Bitesh get every week, get every year? Why is it part of the system we have to support the Leviim? Because one of the jobs of the Leviim was to be the religious leaders, teach Torah to the Jewish people, and we wanted that every Jew should be connected with Torah. Every Jew should have some sense of supporting Torah. So if not every Jew made a Succah Zvulun deal, that partnership that you learn and I work, but at least in some level, every Jew will support the Kohanim, they support the Leviim, they support the religious leaders. Therefore, they're connected with Torah through their support, their financial support, and therefore that will help them in the future as well for the next world of Olam Haba. That's what the Rabbeinu Bachai says, a fascinating idea, how the Torah wanted to put into the system that every Jew will be connected with some level How do you like that, Mark? Of supporting Torah. And there's different levels that people support. Got that, Max? I thought it was a beautiful idea. So now Maisa Sheni, now we have Maisa Sheni B'Shalayim. So Mars, keep on saying Mars. Ralph gets he's called Maasa Rishon. Rishon is first. After you take off the Truma, the Kohen gets Truma. But in the Maaser, we call the types, the Levium get first. Then there's something called Maaser Sheni, the second Maaser. That's 10% of the produce that the owner takes to Jerusalem. You eat it in Jerusalem. If you can't carry it to Jerusalem, remaining after you separated the Truma, and after you separated the Truma, and after you separated the Maaser Rishon, then after we gave Ralph, then we take 10%, you bring it to Jerusalem, and you eat it where in Jerusalem. And that's called Maaser Sheni, but that is not it's not every year. That is only the first year and the second year of the cycle, and it's repeated the fourth and fifth year of the cycle. So 4 out of the 6 years of the cycle, you got to get 10% and go to Jerusalem and eat it in Jerusalem. So now, what about an etrog of Maaser Sheni? It's food etrog I'm going to eat in Jerusalem. It's mine. There's certain laws about that etrog. Holy stuff, holy. It's Maaser Sheni. Got to eat in Jerusalem. I cannot use that. Mishnah, I'm not supposed to. L'chatchila, I should not use that. Then obvious question is, what's the problem? If it's Maaser Sheni, I have a right to eat it. Why should I have to? So I could use the etrog in Jerusalem because it's Maaser Sheni. I eat it in Jerusalem. So the Mishnah states, out of Jerusalem, I cannot eat the Maaser Sheni. It has to be in Jerusalem. So the Mishnah says, in Jerusalem, I cannot take it, but if I went in and I took it in Jerusalem, then natal kosher. But the Eved, if I went and I did use it, it will be kosher if I use the etrog in Jerusalem. Now, I shouldn't. L'chatchila, you ask the rabbi, the Chacham says you shouldn't do it. But if you, Rabbi, I did take it. The rabbi says, okay, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to repeat. You did it, you're good.
So when they don't bring the food, they sell it. They bring the money.
They redeem it. Right. They redeem it, they bring the money. Also for produce. Etrogim in Israel. Yes.
You take the money that I sold from the Maaser Sheni, go to Jerusalem, buy an etrog, and with that money, I could use for something. I cannot use it.
But if you did, exactly. But if you did use it, it's okay. Now, the language of the Mishnah, Maaser Sheni B'Yerushalayim. But money has to be you. There are specific things that the Torah says you could use the money for, the Maaser Sheni money for. But it'll have the same status of Maaser. You just. I don't. You say the word sell. I rather say you redeem it. Onto the money. You say the holiness of the. Right, you pop it on the money. Now the money has the holiness of the. Right, and now you bring that to. It was originally produce of $200 of Maaser Sheni. You have to spend $200 on produce, these type of things. Yes. And then you can eat it. Right. But you can't buy an etrog. No. Why? Because it's the same. The issue is going to be that the etrog, the same reason why you can't use it outside. You can't use that Maaser. The etrog itself, the same way you can't use the etrog. Let's say you lived in Jerusalem. Right, but let's say you're in Jerusalem. You had an etrog tree in Jerusalem. There's no difference between an etrog tree in Jerusalem that was Maaser Sheni, and money that you lived in Haifa and you bought etrog with the money in Jerusalem. It's the same. That money, same thing. And what's the issue? The Gemara is going to say, because we don't want the etrog to become contaminated. But we have to do things to protect Maaser Sheni from becoming contaminated. So, and we know the lulav, people would keep the lulav very fresh by putting the lulav into water, keep it fresh. That they don't have. That was one of the ways they would keep the lulav fresh. They would keep. We don't do it so much today. Maybe there are people that you have a bucket of water, and you put the lulav, you put the lulav in the bucket of water. So now after your hands become wet from the lulav, from the water, and then you touch the etrog, the water coming onto the etrog makes the etrog now able to become contaminated through contamination. And we don't want we do things to prevent things from becoming contaminated. And therefore, the Gemara is going to say that we don't want you to use Maaseh Sheni etrog or Truma etrog. That's going to be the same reason for both, because it's a safeguard, because we don't want, we could be confident that if you use an etrog of Maaseh Sheni or Truma, it's going to get water on it. And if it gets water on it, then the next step, it could become contaminated. And therefore, that's going to be that's one of the reasons for sure the Gemara is going to say, as a protection, a fence. The rabbis say, don't use it. That should apply. No, shouldn't make a difference whether it's the raw etrog that grew in Jerusalem or the money that you had from outside of Jerusalem. You brought it to Jerusalem, and now you bought an etrog with it. The same concern that you shouldn't use that etrog, because we're concerned it's going to become ready to become possibly contaminated, and therefore we don't want you to use such aim. Go ahead and use something else. Don't use this etrog of. Yes.
I redeem the money. I redeem the etrog.
Onto the money.
Or I have, and then I have this $100 that I go. Now I buy an etrog in Yerushalayim.
Right.
I have to make sure I'm buying an etrog that already they took Maaseh Sheni.
Not
only it's
right,
not only the
right. That
I could be buying the thing that I'm not allowed to use to begin with.
right. So we have to. I would seem to be that etrog that you're buying is also, there's no issue of everything is tight, everything is, or maybe you have to use. Right. You would have to. You would have to learn those halachot to see what are the responsibilities that you have on the produce that you bought. That you're buying with them. That's a separate. There's a whole masechta called Maaseh Sheni. There's a whole mishnayot. So whatever those laws are, when I buy the fruit with that money, that fruit becomes Maaseh Sheni. That fruit is. It's not that that fruit is Maaseh Sheni. I don't know that there's a new process. I don't have to do a new process of making Maaseh Sheni. That is, this money was Maaseh Sheni. Now I just. Okay. Okay.
So you're taking the money, you're going in and you could buy.
If the house, right.
And buy it perfect, they'll make it's
right.
it's perfect. They already took a type, they already took that was perfect.
So let's say
go to the guy next door.
So let's say you bought.
It didn't take and you're buying a you can't use it.
Okay, so we have
so the money could actually buy an etrog that's
not able to be. So good, whatever it is, at the end of the day, this money is gonna be, I'm transferring the money in buying produce, and this produce is going to have the status of Maaseh Sheni, right? Because it's just, I should have taken the Maaseh Sheni directly to Jerusalem, but I couldn't carry it. It was too heavy. So now I just put I just put it onto the coins. Now the coins, I'm going to somehow turn the coins into Maaseh Sheni. Either way, I can't use it, exactly. Because there's a concern that's whatever I'm going to buy with that money is going to have the status of Maaseh Sheni. Okay? So now, the Mishnah continues. Is it good or not?
You buy a good one.
Can't use it because of Maaseh Sheni, exactly. So now the Gemara continues. But if you did, after the fact, kosher. It's kosher. Also, chazazit arubo. If a chazazit is like boils. It's like a boils, went on thin little boils. And now these are things that grow from the etrog itself. Some say it's as a result of the rotting of the etrog. And and what's unique about these boils, it's not if you could feel it. It's not that, if you rub your hand against the etrog, if you don't feel something, something, you feel something above the surface. If you feel something above the surface, that's a sign that's a sign that this is something that would possibly invalidate an etrog. So you have this growth, it's thin boils growing on the etrog, around the etrog. And the Gemara is going to discuss exactly, so what does our Mishnah say regarding these boils? If you look there, you have any pictures in your, I don't know if you don't have any pictures of these boils. I've seen some nice pictures of these boils. They're not too pretty. So if it grows, then how much? The Mishnah says as follows: Al rubo, if it went on the majority, these boils took up the majority of the etrog. The Mishnah states that would invalidate the etrog. Not la pitmato. But we're going to see more details. The Gemara is going to explain more about even the certain situations. If it's in multiple places, it's not a. We're going to see more about this in the Gemara. Not la pitmato. The pitum of the etrog. That's the. If you look at your picture on 34b3 on the right, you see it has the etrog, the picture, the pitum. The pitum is that stem that comes out from the etrog. So if the pitum comes off, nolta pitmato, that also would invalidate the etrog. And again, in halacha, there's going to be a discussion. Again, is this only will invalidate the etrog the first day? Will invalidate the etrog throughout the holiday? That's going to be more discussed, as we said earlier, in the halacha. For sure, it will invalidate it the first day of the holiday. Nala pitmato or niklaf. Or let's say there's the peel of the etrog. There's multiple peels of the etrog, multiple layers. It's the outer thin layer of the etrog. That they call it the glossy peel on the outside of the etrog. If that peel is removed, but it's not, it's a very, very thin peel. Also, the Mishnah says it would be invalid if that is removed. O nitzdak, if let's say the etrog got cracked, the etrog got cracked. Also, and then also how much of the etrog got cracked? It seemed that the crack was a very large crack. Again, the details in the halacha will discuss how. What do you say? And again, we'll talk about the first and the other days, and I'll talk about how deep this crack, how large this crack has to be. The halacha will discuss. O nikav, or if it has a hole but a hole itself will not invalidate the etrog, because we said you did the test with the needle, and the needle did not, to see if it's moist, you threw the needle with the thread through the etrog. So here we mean nikav v'chosakos, if it was a hole and the hole removed some of the etrog. So if some of the etrog is missing, then the Mishnah says pasul, then it'll be invalid. We'll see tomorrow. We're learning a fascinating Mishnah regarding etrog. Hopefully by the end, we'll have more understanding when we go out to buy an etrog, what type of etrog to look for. Have a great day, everybody. And we have such a beautiful crowd today. If everybody brings one more person, we double the crowd. How do you like that? I give everybody homework. First 3 years, you can't. That's for benefiting. You can't give away the fruit. You can't benefit. Because so the Torah didn't give us a reason why the first 3 years you can't use the fruit. When you give someone a gift, you're benefiting. The person owes you something. They owe you for that drought. Right? You give someone a present, they owe you. You're having a benefit. It has value to you. You're not expecting, but they feel they owe you. When you give someone a gift, that's a benefit. Thank you very much. You're